Thank you, Lynn. Are there announcements that we need to share about upcoming events? Hearing none, the only thing I would mention is we will have monthly meeting in 2 weeks. So that will be we will, we have a fairly full agenda, though not a lengthy one. But one of the things we'll be deciding is uh, the moving monthly meeting to a weeknight so that more of us can attend. Um, One of the things I've always treasured about this group is that our attendance at meeting for business with attention or meeting for worship with attention to business has almost as many people as we have on meeting for worship on Sundays. And it's a very participatory thing. And as Steve noted, as I've read the minutes, that we've given away half the money from our proceeds of the sale of the meeting house in 2.5 years, a little over 2 years. And so that was one of our goals, was to really make a difference. And it's been fun for me to see people bringing suggestions for worthy causes, et cetera, to do that and how we participate in it. Joys and concerns to share?
My niece and great niece, who live in Peru, South America, most of the time, are going to be here this week. Those of you who have been with us for a while prayed for Maggie, my great niece, when she was diagnosed with leukemia a couple of years ago. She has to come back from Peru every so often for a checkup at Riley Children's Hospital. So they will be here this week, and we're all excited about seeing them.
I went to a memorial service yesterday for my friend Ellie, who was my favorite director. We were at Footlight Musicals, and it was really so good to see some of the people that I used to do shows with. I mean, we keep connected on Facebook, but it was just really nice to get to see everybody in person.
I went to the oral medicine doctor and he decided I didn't need to have a biopsy. He's very optimistic.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Back in the swing of things. Docs have reported I'm in almost my normal bad health. Uh, uh, Actually doing quite well. So uh, have to have some upcoming tests in 2 months just to make sure everything's still clear, and then it'd be back to regular 6 month to 9 month heart checkups and everything. So it was just the perfect storm of um, getting pneumonia and then them trying to treat the pneumonia with a antibiotic I was allergic to, which sent me into anaphylactic shock. And instead of leaving me on an antibiotic, they stopped all the antibiotics, and the pneumonia got worse, and then it spread to my heart. The infection did. So they were just saying, "Yeah, you were just the perfect storm." So, but I feel the best I've felt in 8 weeks. So it's really fun. I would ask for prayers for my son, Ben, and his wife, Yukari. Some of you who follow me on Facebook saw it was Ben's 50th birthday this week, which amazes me how a 19-year-old can have somebody who's 50 for a son. But I got an email from him the night of his birthday, and he said, thanks for the birthday wishes, but it wasn't a particularly happy day, he had to take his wife, who they were home this summer and she looked awfully frail and a little bit jaundiced, but it's hard to tell in Japanese sometimes, their coloring being different. But it turns out she's has severe anemia, and it's caused because her liver is completely failing. And so they got the word there's nothing more they can do except do a liver transplant. She's 42. Her outside life expectancy is 2 years. So she has that window to get a liver. If they can find a living donor, she could have it this summer and then a long road to recovery. But it was she's just a delightful person. Chip's met her.
Mhm.
I mean, her spirits are good. Ben's are not so good. He's trying to keep up a brave face, but they're just the cutest couple. And my heart breaks for them that they have to go through this. So if you could remember her nickname is Yuka, which is short for Yukari. Everybody calls her Yuka. So if you could hold Yuka and Ben, and they live with her parents, or they share a house. So I'm sure her parents are just devastated as well. Let's hold these things in God's light and healing love. As we center down into some worship. Today we're having unprogrammed worship. So we'd invite you to put your devices on mute until you feel led to speak, and we will just go into worship and see how Spirit leads us this morning.
The idea and concept of unprogrammed worship is rather unusual to many people and unique to some Quakers, but not all Quakers. The idea that you would sit in silence with no music, no preaching, no teaching is difficult for some people to understand. And I'm trying to think of all the ways that I have heard unprogrammed worship described. Been described as open worship, silent worship, quiet worship, waiting worship, and expectant worship. And then there are a few that can't wait for it to get over. That's another type of open worship. I'll have to admit that I've been struggling this last week with all the events that have gone on. The plane crashes, the deaths of people on those planes, the political turmoil that seems to go from one part of our country to another, the divide among people, that we really can't seem to talk to each other if we're not on the right side of the political divide. And I'm not sure that there is an explanation for any of this. And that's the part that bothers me, that worship, however we describe it, may not be able to give us an explanation of why these things have happened. So I guess the other type of worship that I would ask for today is a worship of understanding. That I somehow get clarity on some of the events that have happened that I don't understand, but hope through whichever type of worship that I will have some further understanding of why these things are happening.
A thought that I have this morning when Lynn mentioned the birthday. People ask me how I can keep doing what I do, and this is not related entirely to worship, but it can be. I try to focus on what I can do as opposed to what limitations I might have, what I can't do. And I think that is an important feature for everybody at whatever age. Focus on what you can do, how you can help people, how friendly can you be? Can you pray for people who need prayers? Can you pick up your phone and call somebody who might need a phone call? Those kinds of things that you can do rather than on the limitations that you might have.
Well, as most of you know, I grew up in a large evangelical Friends church in Columbus, Ohio. Uh, at its peak, there were 400 on every Sunday morning in that building. After Nancy and I got married, I took her over because my parents were still members, and they're like, "Why don't you come, and have Nancy meet some of our folks and so forth." And I remember it got to the time where it said open worship, and the pastor said, "Well, to have some open worship, and as the organ softly plays during it, I'd like you to think on this." And and Nancy's eyes kind of got wide, and it was not what she was used to. And she leaned over me. She goes, "Well, I never." And the silent worship lasted about a minute with the organ playing. It was more of a little nod to God than it was any true silence. She was, those of you who knew Nancy, she always spoke her mind. She was not impressed. She liked the people, but not the service. But as growing up in that environment, we used to have more when I was a kid. But one of the things I loved is all the Bible stories. We learned everything was a Bible story in Sunday school. All the sermons were Bible. And I liked mostly is stories in the Bible about kids that were in there. Some of them were not politically correct among Quakers. One of my favorites, of course, as a young man was David, the boy shepherd who goes out and kills Goliath with a slingshot and then cuts his head off. Not really approved Quaker sort of thing. It reminded me of in my recuperation recently, I was watching The Angel and the Bad Man, where John Wayne is wounded and stays among Quakers till he gets healed. And they give him a Bible for all he's done for them. And he wants to throw it away, but his sidekick picks it up and starts reading it and goes, "Man, this is good stuff." And then so-and-so slew somebody and so slew somebody. He goes, "This is great writing." But my other kid hero was Samuel. And so here's Samuel, and he hears a voice and he thinks it's Eli. So he goes down and Eli goes, what's up? And he goes, "Well, you called me." He goes, "No, I didn't." He goes, "Now go back to bed." And then Samuel hears the voice again and goes down again. And Eli finally wises up and says, "It's God speaking to you. Now go back and lay down when you hear the voice go, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." And so Samuel does, and sadly, in some ways, God gives him a very hard message. But the idea that a kid could listen to God, I think, was so formative for me. And as I grew, I thought this whole idea of open worship, this idea of really expecting that God is going to come among us and speak. My life is so busy. My head is so full that I need the reminder of Samuel to say, "Speak, Lord, thy servant is listening." And unprogrammed worship really helps me do that, to just lay my thoughts aside as much as possible and concentrating on what's God got to say to me today. And I think that ties in both with what Steve said, the prayer for understanding, and Norma's, "What can I do?" Because that's at the heart of it. What is mine to do in this time? Yesterday at the college board meeting, everybody's reacting a lot to concerns about presidential edicts and how they're going to affect higher education, and we don't have any idea at this point. But we're reacting to conjecture instead of saying, "Okay, Lord, what can we do? What do we do at this time?" And when we got to that point, we had some creative solutions that we could do to help our students and faculty. We need more, I think. "Speak, Lord, thy servant is listening" times.
unprogrammed worship is my ordinary form of worship, one that I do every Sunday when right now I'm in the Wellesley Friends Meeting House. When I'm through spending time with you, I'll go and sit for another hour. And that seems the unprogrammed piece can bring occasionally can bring some difficulties. I remember having what I considered a severely popcorn meeting the day after the election in 2016, I guess it was. And and I can remember some really deep meetings. I had Quaker friends who were very, very moved by my father's memorial meeting, who was not a believer, insofar as I could ascertain at any time. And many of them, people there, were not accustomed to our form of worship, but it somehow infused the day in a really powerful way. I think for me, one of the part of the reasoning behind it is that we each minister to each other, that none of us is put in a place of theoretical greater wisdom or greater authority or better connection to the big guy. We're all in it together, and we all have to row. And kind of right now, I feel like we're in a place where the Cox is yelling power 10. Got to get rowing hard. A few years ago at Wellesley, we had, we've been having some internal difficulties that we had a really hard time resolving in all our threshing and talking. And so we did something we called the Love Initiative. And we just did things to foster love among each other. And made it a priority to think lovingly of one another and remember all the ways in which we were connected, even to people we hadn't met until today. And when I think about what's going on in the bigger place, I feel as though not only am I trying to understand what is the next right thing for me to do, but it's as part of a community, what is the next right thing for us to do? Because I left to my own devices, I'm just not that helpful. I need supervision. And I think that for us to reflect on it corporately, whether we speak of it or not, has a power that we will never understand. I will not always understand how it is that the world operates the way it does, or why God does things that God does, and why humans screw it up so royally every single time. All I can say is that, that I believe to my core that God is love, and it is my sacred obligation to be as loving as possible. Not always in a smarmy, ooey gooey kind of way, although sometimes that's nice, but sometimes in a kind of robust and straightforward way. I better listen some more.
Lynn, did you have some closing music for us?
Yeah, when we realized we were going to have unprogrammed meeting today and no worship leader, I just opened the hymn book to two of my favorite hymns. The first one that I played was "Great Is Thy Faithfulness," and the one I'm going to play here in a second is "How Great Thou Art." Neither one of them may specifically talk about God's love for us and and all of that, and yet when I hear either one of them, that's what I hear and what I feel is God's great love for us and care for us, particularly during times of difficulty and times when we don't understand what is going on, and it's God's love for us that carries me through. My experience of God's love for us that carries me through those hard times. So that's why, I guess, why I was led to pick those hymns, because they fit in beautifully with what we've been talking about this morning.
Thank you again, Lynn. Appreciate your offerings and the vocal ministries of other friends today. I think we all greatly appreciate a lovely gathered meeting. We'll now adjourn, and as far as meeting for worship, let's continue in a spirit of worship in our souls as we move through the rest of the day, and hope that to see you all next week as you're able.
Same time, same place, I guess.
Susan, it's good to see you. I see you on Facebook a lot, and I think we crossed paths, Earl, many, many years ago. I think, but it's good to have you here, and Larry and Twinette, you also.
Good to be here. And we did cross paths. We're in the same class, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I thought so.
Take care, everybody.
Take
You
care,
too.
friends.
Bye-bye.
Wait.
think you hit it right, Ben.